Hey guys, what's up? We finally have all of the job changes coming with patch 7.1's release, which keep in mind that this is new with the brand new Ultimate Features rewritten. So any changes that you see here very likely have some kind of implication for that. First up, let's start with the tanks, and we're going to go with Paladin first. We're looking at Cover's range being extended from 10 to 20 yalms, as well as Intervene now being acquired at level 66. It used to be level 74. And then Hollowed Ground has that effects of the action are going to be applied a little bit earlier. To be quite honest, as someone who has died due to Hollowed Ground delay and has seen many tanks die to it, it is actually a really good change to see there. Seeing Intervene be at an earlier level is honestly a good thing, because it kind of sucks when your gap closer is so much later than others. And then Cover, I see that as useful QOL, although I'm kind of surprised that we're seeing this doubling of its range at this point in time. However, before anyone gets too shockingly excited about Hollowed Ground's change, we are seeing similar with the rest of the tank immunities. That's like Warrior's Holmgang and so on. For Warrior, we're looking at two changes. First is Holmgang, like I mentioned before, is going to have its effect applied earlier. And then for Chaotic Cyclone, we're going to have hit detection for this, triggering a little bit earlier. Dark Knight is getting few changes that I actually do think were kind of really needed. The first is that Dark Mind is now also going to reduce physical damage taken by 10%. For anyone who is a long-time Dark Knight enjoyer, you knew that this was just magical before. Honestly, really glad to see this finally. Honestly, Living Dead, like all tank communities, is now going to have the effect applied earlier. Abyssal Drain always did have some lifesteal on it, but we're looking at its potency increase from 200 to 500, and then Carven Spit, which never had any lifesteal on it whatsoever, is now going to have a restoring your own HP by 500 potency. Is it the biggest sustained change in the world? No, but I do think that it is nice to see it here. Then we're looking at damage increases across Blood Spiller. You spam that a lot. Scarlet Delirium, Comeuppance, and Torque Cleaver, which is going to basically be your Blood Spiller when you're in that special burst phase. And then lastly, we are looking at Dark Missionary, which used to, similar to Dark Mind, only mitigate magic damage, now apply 5% physical mitigation. All in all, I think that these changes do push the Dark Knight in a more positive direction, although I think that will this suddenly resolve some of their sustain issues that have been mentioned? No, but I do think that this is a good push in the right direction. I'm very glad to see the incorporation of physical mitigations where there used to not be anything other than magical. For Gunbreaker, no longer is Super Belied going to make healers jump. Is that the first change that leaps out to me? Whoops. But the next thing, so basically for Super Belied, instead of 1 HP, you're going to go down to 50% HP, which is a lot better, although Super Belied never has been a tank buster I've had an issue with. But mind you, I am usually on Barrier Healer, so it's like not a big deal. But even if I'm like on White Mage or Astro, just throw a few Essential Dignities under that protective barrier of Super Belied, it's never really been an issue. But good QOL, I suppose. Like, I don't have an issue with it. Interestingly enough, Aurora, which is like a heal over time that you can apply to yourself or like others like your co-tank or whatever, now it has its potency increased by 50% from 200 to 300 potency. So that's interesting to see that Gunbreaker's getting such a sustained boost. Heart of Light, similar to Dark Knight's Dark Missionary, used to only mitigate magical damage, now it also mitigates physical. I think this is a healthy change, of course, just the same. And then Hypervelocity, we are looking at its potency being reduced, actually, from 180 to 160, and so that's interesting. Or rather, I should say 220 to 200, because we'll all have the melee mastery at max rank. But what we're looking at here is, interestingly, this was the OGCD gap closer, so they're nerfing it just a little bit here. What I do like seeing, though, and actually maybe I shouldn't speak for other Gunbreaker players who are more dedicated to the job, but to me, I see Double Down having its cartridge cost reduced from 2 to 1 as a very healthy change. I will leave that to you guys in the comments, though. I see that as a very healthy change. Now we're going to get into healers, and keep in mind that with Features Rewritten Ultimate coming, that a lot of these changes should be viewed under that lens. And now the really good question for every single healer is, how much piety are we looking at the healers having with their testing for some of these changes? Keep that in mind. We don't know what level of piety that the developers were using when they made some of these MP cost changes, which are in some cases quite sweeping. So keep that in mind. Now the first change for all healers is that Esuna has no cast time. I'm actually kind of glad for this because was it the biggest cast time? No. Did I do T? Was I able to remove throttles? Yes. Although this has a very good indication that we're going to be using Esuna earned through. For White Mage, its AoE ability in dungeons did not have a weave window. It has now been added. That is what the cast time being reduced now permits. White Mage's Asylum is not getting number changes or anything, it's just a different visual effect. And then we are interestingly looking at Glare 3 having its damage increased from 330 to 340. And likewise, Afflatus Misery has had its numbers bumped up to reflect, hey, this is equivalent to 4 Glare casts, so it gets 40 more damage. Is that going to be enough for make it keep up with Astro? Who knows, but I can tell you as someone who has actually picked up White Mage and has been playing it a lot, and I kind of enjoy it, but it definitely is weaker than Astro for the reasons I pointed out in my video, but this isn't really addressing those reasons directly outside of damage numbers, so we'll have to see. But what I do like seeing is that Divine Caress, which Temperance's effect is 30 yalms, Divine Caress is the barrier you apply when you hit the Temperance button again. It's now been increased to 30. I very much am appreciative of this because I really hated 15. For Scholar, let's keep it real simple. Your heal over time effect, whether it's through Seraph or whether it is through Eos or Selene, rip Selene, homogenized into death, homogenized to the grave, but it has had a decent potency increase from 150 to 180, so that is roughly a 20% increase on their constantly, persistently outgoing heal over effect. So it's not something I'm going to sneeze at, because if it's a constantly given free thing, that's pretty nice. For Astro, they're not getting any healing buffs or any MP buffs or anything of the sort. Gravity, their AoE ability is simply having its AoE increased from 5 to 8 yalms. Actually, I got ahead of myself with the Scholar. We also saw massive MP costs just in terms of like how many different abilities are being hit. We're looking at Consultation, Manifestation, and Accession all having their MP costs reduced by 100. Like I said on the onset, how much Piety were the developers taking into fruit, we really don't know. However, this gives me a good indication that they wanted even more MP. And now that gets us into the Sage, which like Scholar, so the same idea, barrier healers are both looking at their MP costs being significantly reduced for their AoE abilities, their AoE healing abilities. Sage Howls, however, is also looking at slight damage increase to Dosis, Toxicon, and Pneuma, just keeping it all consistently being elevated. And then Philosopha, which I think, same idea as Divine Caress, seeing its yard increase from 20 to 30 yalms is good. It's nice QOL. Piercing Talon now gets a little bit of an interaction with Elusive Jump. Elusive Jump, when you use it, is going to give you Enhanced Piercing Talon, which increases the potency from baseline 200 to 350. Gear Skogul is now going to have stacks of Nastron ready, reduced from 3 to 1. However people feel about that, let me know in the comments. Mirage Dive is having its potency significantly increased from 200 to nearly double at 380. We're going to be looking at Nastron potency increased to being double from 300 to 600. And then we are also looking at the Lance Mastery changes that adds on a bit more potency also being increased. Stardiver is also going to be getting buffs from 720 to 820. And Starcross is getting 2 buffs, damage 100 potency, but more importantly, range from 3 to 20 yalms. For Ninja Throwing Dagger is now getting its potency to 200. We are looking at Dream Within a Dream getting a little bit of a potency increase. We're looking at Doku Mori now having its what used to be single target effect now being in a cone in front of the target. Really good quality of life, because I have been kind of messed up by this sometimes, not intentionally, like I'll just move a little bit to the side, is that Tenchi Jin, now you can move while under that effect, so that's going to be very nice. And then Tenri Jindo is going to have the hit detection of this action triggering earlier, so kind of similar to Warrior. Hisatsu Gyoten is now having its recast time halved down to 5 seconds. Gyofu is having a slight potency increase up to 240. Zanshin is now having a little bit more significant, almost 10% damage increase from 820 to 900. And then Tendo Keishi Setsugeka is having like an animation change to it. Arcane Circle is getting an interesting interaction because remember, this is the self-applied barrier that applies the heal over time effect to the party when it breaks. So Circle of Sacrifice effect now grants stacks of Immortal Sacrifice when you or party members successfully land an ability. How this is going to actually play out in game, I don't know, but to me that's interesting to see Arcane Circle get this interaction. Now for Void Reaping and Cross Reaping, if you're the kind of player that just looks at the bars, which I honestly go by muscle memory, these will now no longer flash and like shine when you're at your last stack when you have Communio. So you don't want to use that last stack on Void or Cross Reaping. You want to really use it on Communio because that is going to be much more powerful. Also same idea for Grim Reaping, the AoE. Executioner's Gallows, now hit detection for this is also going to trigger earlier. For Machinist, I really like Machinist as a job. I actually enjoy how rotation feels. Oh god. But I don't know if this is enough to bump it up. Although we are going with a brand new ultimate, and there's no doubt that the wrench is going to be a very, very useful mitigation tool. But in terms of these changes, we're just looking at slight damage increases to Heated Clean Shot, Blazing Shot, Flamethrower. Why Flamethrower? Just that's their AoE ability that they like hunker down and they just spray. Double Check and Checkmate, which you will spam a lot. But are these potency increases enough? Dancer's getting damage buffs to Fan Dance and Fan Dance 3. Is it going to be super earth-changing? No, but it is helpful to push them up a bit, I suppose. Curing Waltz is interestingly having its like AoE, how large the radius is, increase from 3 to 5 yalms, so it'll get a little bit of stragglers that aren't tightly packed together in the party hit, as well as it'll be easier to overlap with your partner for the doubled potency up to 600 from 300. Starfall Dance is getting good QOL, where your hotbar is going to change your Devilment ability into Starfall Dance, because probably the best way to describe Starfall Dance is that it's an upgraded Devilment. So it's very nice to see them compacting that into one button. Oh god, these aren't the Black Mage changes people want. Oh god. Oh god. So first of all, is Flare has its cast time reduced from 4 to 3 seconds. Ley Lines now has a maximum of 2 charges, and so that is interesting. That one I do think is very interesting. Remember, we also have the ability to like replace where the Ley Lines is. We now get a new trait where Astral Fire is going to make the cast time of Despair instant, although the monkey paw curls and says with Enhanced Enochian we are looking at a 33% increase, which is what we currently have, reduced to 32%. This is really not going to help Black Mage versus Pictomancer at this point, yo. I don't even need to hear the comments or see anyone's thoughts on that. I know what you guys are going to say. For Summoner, let's talk about the good. The quality of life in breaking up the Ifrit chain is going to be really great, and that's basically what the first two things are. So instead of being a combo action, it's just going to be a buff that you can spend whenever you want. Although most likely, yes, most likely if you gap close, you're probably going to use the melee ability, but it is an option. What I, however, do think kind of sucks for Summoner is that Summoner, similar to Black Mage, unless you really, really, really need the mobility and, like, res, which who knows in multi, maybe for prog, but like I still think that Pictomancer just does so much more than Summoner that I just don't see it's enough. Red Mage is just getting damage increases, and frankly I still don't see these as being enough to put it on par with Pictomancer. Like, I am 99.9% sure, just looking at these things, that unless you really want a revive or someone really wants to play Red Mage, that Pictomancer still dwarfs it. Like, these are not the caster changes that we needed, fam. Like, I'm gonna be real. Now for Pictomancer, we are looking at all of those motifs. You know, if you had to paint to prepare before a pull, all of that is going to be given to you immediately when you instance. So you're not going to need to worry about preparing those things, or like, oh no, the Pictomancer didn't prepare the paint before the fall. And to be quite clear, there are no Pictomancer nerfs here. This is not the video for it, but my dudes, I don't think that this is what we were looking for the casters at all. At all. Because it's like, why do... At this point, why would you want to take almost anything over Pictomancer? Because Pictomancer is clearly doing more. And then people might come back at me being like, oh my god, but Ver Flare, Ver Holy Scorch, and Resolution. That is the Red Mage's combo, and do I think that that will shift up the numbers? I mean, obviously it will, but to a degree enough to make it, like, on par with Pictomancer. Same thing with Summoner. Like, yes, you do summon Ifrit, Titan, and Garuda pretty often, and sure, Sunflare you do cast. But, like, is this gonna make them even compete with Picto? I don't think so. But I digress, not the video for it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about any of these changes.